Hello guys, I am back from another video, and today we're talking about what if Deku was the only boy with a quote-unquote quirk. So, in the last video we talked about how, when, Ryder basically came to be, Ryder basically came to the, mall to basically get some more, stuff so he can sell, because recently after the death of, Archer, he decided to become the quote-unquote breadwinner of this, organization. So, after finding Izuku there, he would decide to fight them, or fight him, so he can get revenge on, get revenge for, wait for a second, get revenge for, Archer. After, summoning his Aprishiki, he would basically start fighting against Izuku by using his, long-range rifle and his staff to basically, fire off electricity and regular old musket bolts. So, after a while of fighting, Izuku would get out of the, mall as Ryder would basically appear, and he would basically transform his flying ship into a large, gigantic-ass mammoth-like monster, as he would summon out the Noble Phantasm, or say the Noble Phantasm, of, Ivan the Terrible, which is one of his heroic spirits. I don't want to pronounce it again because I probably might butcher it, so if you want to know what is the name of his, Noble Phantasm, just search it, okay? Because goddamn, that name is super annoying too and super pretentious. So, after saying the Noble Phantasm's name, Izuku, would basically create a clone of himself, as he would use his main body to basically block the attack from basically destroying everything. After doing that, he would basically sacrifice himself. Kind of. Thanks to thanks to him basically being a fusion between, Jack the Ripper and etc. etc. Thanks to Jack the Ripper, he's able to basically, put his consciousness in that other clone after, getting his main body destroyed. So, after Izuku did that, let's just say for Ryder, his mana is pretty much low. Pretty low. And that's basically how he defeated him, by basically using too many of his Noble Phantasms. So, after defeating him, he would basically get out of there, but before he basically left, a person was watching him. In this case, Mount Lady, and she seems to be, quite interested in him. And I mean quite interested. Because, let's just say, she's going to be another, another part of his harem, let's just say that. So, when Izuku got back, everybody was basically getting ready for the, training camp. When Izuku came back to his, dorm room, he would basically go to sleep in the arms of, Ida. But when Izuku woke up, he would basically start to remember his, his little experience with her basically kissing him. And it's not because of, passionate reasons, it's because, he had to get more mana for him so he can, regenerate himself. And also heal. So, Izuku was still embarrassed about that, so he decided to go to the shower to basically take a bath. So he can, get ready for the whole, training camp thing. So, Izuku, after, a while basically, going into the bathroom, basically washing himself, taking a shower, I guess, Ida, not knowing that Izuku is basically in the bathroom, would basically come in, as when she saw the clothes basically, in the laundry basket, and seeing that it's Izuku's clothes, she would start to blush a little bit, knowing that Izuku is in the bathroom with her. But then she saw Izuku's boxers, and, she would decide to start, sniffing them. And when Izuku noticed her basically sniffing his boxers, let's just say Izuku now has a weird image of her now. So yeah, after leaving the bathroom, let's just say Ida was a bit embarrassed. So yeah, after Izuku put on his new clothes, which resembled, Kukulane's, I guess you can say casual clothes in, in Fate Extra CCC, I think that's the name of the game, I can't remember. So after arriving there, basically in the, living quarters, everybody was just drooling at his, new look. Except for, obviously her, his sister, aka Izumi, is not really interested in him. Because remember, they're freaking siblings. So, and as for, for Bakugo, she's basically eyeing him like a piece of meat. After a while talking, let's just say, well, Kirishima was a bit too close to Izuku. Until Ida basically, get out of the bathroom, and she seems to be quite mad at, well, Kirishima for getting a little bit closer to Izuku. So she would tell Izuku to basically come with her because she wants to talk to him. Or at least, tells him to basically help her out with some of her, clothes. After complying, he would basically go into go back to their room as they would basically start to, pack all of their things to basically get ready for the training camp. While they were waiting for their teachers, apparently they're going to be, having another, guest. When his teachers basically arrive, specifically, Aizawa and also, well, All Might, they would explain that they're going to be having the Big Three join the, well, training camp. And the Big Three were a female version of, Mirio Togata, then there's Nejiri Hado, and finally a female version of, Tamaki. So, after introducing themselves, and also Nejiri wanting to talk to Izuku, well, let's just say all the girls were pretty much wondering if they're gonna be rivals. And oh boy, let's just say Nejiri was pretty interested in Izuku, ever since she heard about this kid, specifically a boy with a quirk. So yeah, after a while of banter, they would basically be told by Aizawa that it's finally time for them to finally leave. So yeah, after that, they would go onto the bus, putting all of their luggage into the bus, and they would start to leave, going towards the training camp. So yeah, that is basically what happened last episode. And so, let's talk about what happens next. So, after a while of basically waiting in the, basically riding through the forest and, waiting, Izuku was basically sleeping on the lap of, well, Ida, because he was pretty tired at the time. Ida didn't really mind, but, well, let's just say everybody was freaking, basically noticing all of this, and some of the, actually not even some, more like almost all of Class 1A is basically jealous of her, except for, well, Izumi. Izumi was, appreciating this, and she thinks that, Ida would really, would pretty much be a great, stepsister, I guess. Not really stepsister, I meant, sister-in-law. And as for, Bakugo, well, let's just say she's fuming like a fucking volcano at that point. And for, well, wait for a second. And as for the Big Three, well, one of them specifically, well, Mirio seems to be quite interested in Izuku, as she would say this to Ida. Hey, Miss Ida? As she would say this. What is it? As she would say this. Well, it seems that both you and Izuku have a great relationship. Do you perhaps are dating? Perhaps? As she would say this. Oh, no, we're not really dating. In fact, we're more like, how do I explain this? As a manifestation of, basically, Jack basically, arrived, or basically appeared, as she would say this. I meant he. As he would say this. I guess you can say that they're more like master and servant than anything else. As all three of them would basically be in shock, as one of them would say this, specifically, well, Tamaki. Who's that? As, well, Ida would say this. Oh, I forgot to introduce you to him. Meet Jack. Jack the Ripper, one of Izuku's, fused heroic spirits that is basically in his body. Or at least fused with him. As they would basically say, what the heck is a heroic spirit, and what do you mean by that's Jack the Ripper? So, well, Ida would explain, and also Jack would explain, as one of them would say this, specifically Nejiri. So you're saying that he's fused with 3 different people, one Lancelot, one Cuchulainn, which I don't really know, and Jack the Ripper, the famous serial killer of London, as he would say this. Right you are, lady. Now, and if you want to say that they're, and if you're wondering why they're kind of like master and servant as well, because Izuku needs to have mana to survive, well, he had to make a pact with her, so she's the only one, or at least the only one that I think of, that seems to have enough, mana to basically sustain Izuku. So, yeah, that is why I decided to pick her as Izuku's new master. As one of them would say this, specifically Tamaki. I see. So, she would basically look at Izuku's sleeping body, as Izuku seems to be, quite relaxed. As she would say this. So, is Izuku, as she would say this, oh, don't worry. Izuku's pretty much fine. Somewhat. As she would say this. What do you mean by that? As she would say this, well, let's just say I sort of, she would start to blush a little bit, as, Jack the Ripper would spill the beans, as he would say this. Well, let's just say accidentally, how do I say this? Accidentally seeing him in his, almost nude glory in the bathroom. Everybody would just, basically, leaned over there and basically looked at, Ida, as she would say this. To be fair, I was just, I didn't know that he was in the bathroom. As all of the girls would start, become angry, including, Mineta, because she wanted to see Izuku's, full naked glory herself as well. And as for Bakugo, let's just say she wants to, catch some hands if you get what I mean. And as for, Izumi was going like, excuse me, what? She was just confused as all hell. Let's just say that. So, as for Nejire would say this. So you saw Izuku, as she would say this, no, not fully naked. I mean, he was, wearing a towel, she would be a flustered mess, as Jack would be there just laughing. Basically, I guess you can say flying in the air, I guess. I mean, in his spirit form, I guess you can say he's basically, in a more, ghost-like form, I guess, as you would say this. That damn expression of yours. Damn. Anyway, I should be leaving. As he would start to leave, going into, Izuku's mind. After a while, complete silence after that, little confession. Well, let's just say the girls there are pretty much jealous of her. Specifically, Ida. So after a while of basically going through the forest, well, everybody was told to go outside of the bus, or go, basically get out of the bus, basically. So, as everybody's getting out of the bus, as, when Ida was about to wake up Izuku, well, one of them specifically, wait for a second, as Aizawa would say this, Ida, please do not wake Izuku up. As she would say this, why Miss Aizawa? As she would say this, well, this is a special little thing for him. And besides, you're a student and Izuku is not. So, as she would say this, oh, yeah. As when she was about to leave, she would ask, wait, how about the other big three? How about the big three over there? As she would say this, well, they're technically an exception. As she would say this, yeah, an exception. As she would basically get out of the bus, as Aizawa would leave. All three of the members of the big three are basically alone with Izuku. Nejire was there basically, seeing that Izuku seems to be quite uncomfortable not having his, lap pillow. Well, she would basically, grab Izuku's head, as she would act as the lap pillow this time. She would feel Izuku's, hot breath, as she would feel, kind of comfortable. As she would say this, Izuku kinda looks adorable. As, well, Tamaki was a bit afraid, knowing that, she's a bit of a coward just like in canon, as she would basically, be told by, Mirio to at least touch Izuku. But she sort of has this, unconscious fear of men. Imagine that, phobia that's similar to, I can't remember that specific phobia's name, but it's basically the fear of men. So she would be afraid that, Izuku might, jump off and maybe maybe violate her or something, but Izuku is too much of a gentleman to do that. So, as, Mirio's basically, tempting her to do this, well, she would be forced to do it, as she would basically, touch Izuku's hair. Izuku would feel a bit, weirded out by this, and, well, he would somewhat, start to, feel, how do I say this, comfortable with the touch. Izuku thinks that it's, not, Ida, but he doesn't know because, he's still asleep. When, Tamaki, was touching Izuku's hair, she would feel normal. He's not attacking him. I'm attacking her. Because that's what she thought when, when all boys are being touched, she would just get attacked and, all those things. I'm not gonna tell you what it is. Let's just say it's like, you know, grape, but without the G. Yeah, let's just say that. So, when, she was basically, well, wait for a second. When she's just, rubbing Izuku's hair, well, Aizawa and also, well, All Might would basically go back into the bus, as she would say this, specifically, All Might. Well, you didn't really mean to do that, Aizawa, as she would say this. Well, it's pretty much easy for me to do it. Besides, it would be good training for them, after all. Try and not to, wait for a second, god damn it. Try to expect the unexpected. As All Might would say this. I see. As she would basically look over and see Izuku basically still asleep. As she would say this. The young man seems to be quite, adorable and seems to be quite comfortable, Aizawa. As she would say this. I guess so. As she would basically look over and see Tamaki actually touching Izuku. As she would be a little bit surprised. As Mirio seems to be watching Izuku with, an intent, I guess you can say face. So, after Aizawa tells, all three of them to get ready because they're going to go into the, into the training camp proper, they would basically get ready as, well, wait for a second, god damn it. Aizawa would basically tell the bus driver to basically bring them towards, the training camp. So, after a while of basically, going through that forest and, going, I guess you can say the side of the forest, they would finally make it towards the, training camp proper. When, Aizawa basically gets off the bus, and also, All Might, one of the big three, specifically, Nejire, would basically try to wake up Izuku. Izuku would wake up as Izuku would say this. Ida, please stop. He would basically open his eyes as he would see instead of, Ida, it's Nejire. As Izuku would basically stand up, as Izuku would say this. What are you doing? Wait for a second. What are you doing? I didn't, Izuku would starts to be, a little bit flustered, just like, him and Canon, as, well, Nejire would say this. You seem to be quite comfortable, until Ida decided to leave you. So I decided to become your little pillow for you. She would basically, give off this almost motherly aura, as Izuku would start to feel a little bit comfortable, as Izuku would say this. But still, it's still embarrassing, as Izuku would basically say that, as she would basically start to laugh a little, as she would say this. You actually sound adorable, Izuku-kun. As Izuku would say this. Izuku-kun? As Izuku would basically, start to blush, as Izuku would say this. Wait a minute. Where's Ida? And where's the others? As, one of them would say this, specifically Mirio. Well, in the training camp, well, last year, we're told to do this. As she would explain the whole, concept of the, training camp. As when Izuku heard this, well, let's just say Izuku just goes like, oh god. Izuku would basically just pinch the bridge of his nose, as Izuku would say this. Well, that does make sense. As, well, one of them would say this, specifically, wait for a sec. Tamaki, as she would say this. Yeah, it was absolutely scary when I first tried it out. She would basically start to, scratch a bit of her, I guess you can say forearm, as Izuku would say this. Yeah, I guess so. Anyway, I should be leaving now. So, Izuku would basically get his bags as he would start to leave, going into the, going into the training camp proper. After seeing, the, training camp, and it seems to be quite big. In fact, pretty huge. As when Izuku came out of the bus and basically, looked around, he hears a voice. Izuku! As Izuku would basically look over, as he would see, well, Miss Aizawa. Wait for a second. When Izuku looked over, he would see Miss Aizawa, as Izuku would say this. What is it, Miss Aizawa? As she would say this. Well, because, well, Ida's not here, you're gonna be training by yourself. As Izuku would say this. Oh, sure, then who's going to be my... As Izuku would hear the sound of meowing? And it's not like an actual cat's meow, it's more like a human basically imitating the sound of a cat's meow. And when Izuku looked behind him, he would see four people, specifically girls, for obvious reasons, because remember, you basically get it at this point. So, Izuku would see four, girls, or, heroes, basically wearing cat costumes, as they would proclaim that they're called the Wild Wild Pussycats. Izuku would just basically have this deadpan expression as he would basically say to himself, what the fuck did I got into? Like, he would just think in his mind, as he would think in his mind as well, am I in some sort of, weird ass, how do I say this? Weird ass anime convention or something? As when Izuku said that, one of them would say this, specifically, a girl with a, he would see one of the girls, specifically the one that's basically wearing that weird ass cat girl outfit, and she seems to have, reddish hair and reddish eyes, as she would say this. Nice to meet you, Mr. As he would say this. Izuku Midoriya. As she would say this. A bit serious. Anyway, call me Madelay. As Izuku would say this. Hi. As Izuku would basically shake her hand, as she would say this. Welcome to my training camp. So, why is a boy here exactly? As one of them would say this, specifically, what's her name? CC blonde girl with blue eyes would say this. Wait, you're the boy with the quirk, right? As Izuku would say this. Yeah, I'm the first boy with a quirk. Not technically a quirk than anything else, but as when, one of them heard that, she would say this. Really? Then what is it exactly? As Izuku would say this. I would rather not explain it. As Izuku would basically, look away, as he would look at the training ground. As Izuku would say this. Hey, I'm probably gonna train over there, so... As one of them would say this. Specifically, one that seems to be a large, buff-ass girl with, tiger stripes. As she would say this. I want you to try and train with me, then. As Izuku would say this. Are you sure about that? As she would say this. Yeah, pretty sure. As Izuku would say this. Very well then, so where should we? As she would say this. We should spar over there. As Izuku would basically look over there and see a large area seems to resemble, a battlefield. As Izuku would basically, start to move over there, as she would say this. Nice. So, you may call me by my hero name. You may call me Tiger. As she would basically get ready her, claws, as Izuku would say this. Fine then. As Izuku would grab, Erendite out of nowhere, as she would say this. So, you have the ability to use to summon weapons? As Izuku would say this. Not necessarily. As he would basically start to charge up the blade, burning red with dark, almost, how do I say this dark energy, as his body would start to steam over, starting to become dark, his body would start to be engulfed in dark fog, as Izuku would charge over there, while his eyes were burning red, both of them, as he would basically start, fight against, Tiger. Tiger would not dodge these strikes, as she seemed to be quite hurt. Izuku would basically defeat her in a few milliseconds at that point. All of them would just be in shock, except for, Aizawa, as Aizawa would say this. Well, it seems that you don't really have any control in your powers, Izuku. As Izuku would say this. Kind of. I mean, I sort of have control, but, because I'm a berserker, or at least have the berserker class on me, especially with my, madness enhancement, I don't really, as she would say this, madness enhancement. She would basically say, as Izuku would say this, yeah, that's what all berserkers have. It basically makes them stronger, but in exchange, they will turn them into mad monsters. Basically, what, the class says, they're berserkers. As one of them would say this, specifically, Madelay. Quite interesting. So, why did you say class exactly? As Izuku would say this. Aizawa, can you tell them? As she would say this. Very well. So, after explaining the whole situation with Izuku, as she would say this. So you were turned into this? That's horrible, said, the blonde-haired one with the, blue eyes, as one of them specifically, a green-haired one with, Wait for a second. A green-haired one, almost similar to Izuku's, but a little bit lighter, with golden eyes would say this. Yeah, why did she do that in the first place? As Izuku would say this. It's a long story, and you probably won't believe it anyway. As one of them would say this. Well, we've seen weirder things, said, Tiger. As Izuku would say this. Anyway, I need to do some more training, so... As Izuku would walk over to a mountain, as he would start to train a little bit. So, one of them would say this, specifically Tiger. That kid is quite strong. As she would say this, specifically, Madelay. Agreed. I wonder what happened to the other students right now. Back with the other students of Class 1A, they're currently screaming and running from the monsters, basically, chasing them, specifically the mod monsters created by Madelay. Yeah, they're pretty not, they're pretty much not good right now. So, yeah. So, let's go back to Izuku. So, Izuku's there basically training as all three of the, big three are basically watching him as Izuku is basically breaking down boulders without any, force at all. Because remember, he basically has madness enhancements, but thankfully because he has now a master, well, it's somewhat lowered, kind of, and I mean a bit lowered. I mean, he still has madness enhancement, but it's somewhat minute. But it's somehow returning. And it will be foreshadowing in the future, let's just say that. Smiles evilly. So, yeah. So, one of them would say this, specifically, well, wait for a second. As Nejiri would say this. He seems quite strong. As one of them would say this, specifically, well, Mirio. Yeah, he seems pretty strong. I mean, it does make sense after all. After fighting that archer guy, as, she would think, as she would say this. I wonder how he's able to, She would basically start to think a little bit more as, well, Tamaki is basically looking at him, seeming intently, and she seems to be blushing, seeing him basically fight so hard, as she would say this. I want to be like him. She would basically, see that under her breath, as after a while basically training, Izuku would basically, take off his shirt, letting all of the sweat basically run down his, sweating body. All three of them would start to, how do we say this? Nosebleed their brains out, let's just say that. So yeah, after Izuku, takes off his shirt, he would basically put it on his, completely wet and sweaty shirt basically on his, on his neck, basically similar to a towel, as he would start to leave. As all three of them would basically, get up from that, little explosion of blood, as they would see Izuku basically left. They would start to, follow him, as Izuku would basically go to his little tent. Izuku would basically change his clothes into, I guess you can say, normal-ish clothes. Just imagine, like, Izuku's, clothes, just like in the, in the manga. What do I mean by this? Well, the one that he was wearing in the, training camp. In the, canon verse. So, after Izuku wore that, Izuku would start to leave to go to make dinner. So, Izuku would start to make dinner with the help of, Madelay. As Madelay would basically say, you're pretty good at cooking. As Izuku would say this. Well, it does make sense. After all, I was the only good cook back when I was still working for them. As she would say this. Oh yeah, that group that you were talking about when you were talking about your powers. As Izuku would say this. Yeah, let's just say I sort of hate them. After all, they basically turned me into their damn slave. As she would say this. She would basically look at Izuku once again, as she would say this. So, your whole master and servant thing, I wanted to ask, who is your master exactly? As Izuku would say this. Oh, it's my classmate. Not really classmate. It's more like, well, she was selected, thanks to the help of Jack. As she would say this. Then who is her name? As she would say this. Oh, her name is... As Izuku would hear the sound of a familiar voice. Hey, Izuku, we're here! As when Izuku looked over, he would see... Well, wait for a second. looks over and sees the rest of Class 1A, as Ida would basically run up to him, as Izuku would run up to, Ida. Both of them would basically, she would basically jump on Izuku, as both of them would hug. Not really some, more like, all three of the, big three, they would basically start to become a little bit jealous after, hearing his little story, or at least eavesdropping on that little story of his. So, yeah, one of them specifically, Tamaki, well, oh boy. After hearing his little story about how he was, forced to commit suicide, and also turned into that, and was told that he's going to become the servant of, Ida, well, she sort of had a connection and, became a yandere. Yeah. Yep, we have a femme Tamaki that's also a yandere. Great. So, after, seeing that, well, all of the girls currently in Class 1A, except for, Ida, well, they would start to become jealous, except for, Izumi, because she doesn't really care. Kind of. She was surprised seeing this, as she would think in her mind, she's definitely gonna be a great sister-in-law. She would basically look over and see Bako fuming from the mouth. Basically, like she's completely, mad. Just imagine her just, like she's getting rabies or something. Oh, God. So, yeah, after saying that, Izuku would say this. Oh, hi, guys, as all of them would basically look back at Izuku, as Izuku would say this. Here, we made dinner. So, after seeing the large dinner that, Izuku made with the help of Madelay, they would basically go to the table, as they would basically get ready their, their, utensils. As Izuku would say this. Alright, eat up. So, as everybody's basically eating up, everybody would just start to, tell Izuku about their experience in that damn forest. They would basically explain, as Izuku would say this. So you were chased by earth monsters? As all of them would say this. Yes, as Izuku would say this. So, do you know who it is? Said, one of the students there, specifically Momo, as Izuku would say this. Well, I did remember Madelay having the ability to manipulate the earth and even create little mud monsters, or earth monsters, even creating a bird that's able to fly. As all of them would basically look at Madelay, as Madelay would basically move away. As, they would look back at they would basically look back at Izuku, as Izuku is basically, taking care of, Ida. After all, Izuku is technically her servant, so Izuku would basically, take care of her, little, injuries, as all of them would basically be jealous of her basically getting special treatment from Izuku. So, yeah. So, after that, they would basically, finish dinner, as all of them would realize that there's a hot springs here. So everybody's completely excited, and then they remember the whole, swimsuit thing. So everybody would basically bring in their swimsuits, except for Izuku, because he's just wearing a towel and some briefs under that. So he would basically go into the bath, go into the, hot springs first, and thankfully it's separated to boys and girls, so Izuku doesn't have to, get annoyed by them. So, Izuku would basically go into the hot springs, as Izuku would basically go into the water. Izuku would feel super relaxed, feeling all the, hot water, or at least the, I guess you can say, the hot springs water basically, moving through his skin, as Izuku would feel absolutely relaxed. Izuku would basically sigh, as Izuku would look over, as you would see a little kid. Izuku would look over, as he would just basically, come up to him, as Izuku would say this. Hello? Who are you? As Izuku would look towards him, well, the kid would basically look towards him, as he would see that it's a boy. As Izuku would say this. Oh, what are you doing here, kid? As he would say this. Oh, my mom told me that I can stay here. I just wanted to sleep. Not really sleep, more like, rest here for a while. As Izuku would notice that he was about, how do I say? Oh, I'm 5 years old, as Izuku would say this. Well, no, I meant she, or Koda, you basically get it. Koda seems to be, 5 years old, and that's literally Koda. So, Izuku would say this. So, what's your name exactly? As he would say this. Oh, Koda, and as he would basically look at Izuku, as he would say this. Oh, why are you even here? I thought girls are only allowed to be, heroes. As Izuku would say this. Well, kid, well, I'm the exception to that rule. As he would say this. What's except... Koda would not understand that word, as Izuku would explain that he has a quote-unquote quirk. He was amazed seeing this, as he would basically ask if he can get a quirk himself, as Izuku would say this. Promise me, kid. Do not. Izuku would basically say that, as Koda would basically just say to himself, what? So, after Izuku said that to, Koda, Izuku would basically go back to the hot springs and basically, go on to the, hot springs, pool and basically start resting. Meanwhile, at the, girls' side, and the girls' side was pretty full. So, yeah, everybody's basically there, including, Class 1A, and also, the members of, the Big Three. The Big Three is basically there, basically resting, as currently Mineta is basically, staring at the wall, separating Izuku to the rest of the girls. Yeah, oh no. Just imagine it just like in canon, but except the opposite. So, not Koda, I meant, Mineta is basically, there basically asking to herself, this is the promised land. She would basically, I guess you could grab, like, her sticky balls as she would start to, climb off the wall, as all of the girls would see this, as they would try to get get her off there, as she would say this is my destiny, I'll finally get to see Izuku, as she would basically look, like, almost towards, the edge of the, wall, or at least all the way to the top of the wall, as she would see Koda, as Koda would basically, kick her face basically back into the pool, as all of the girls were just basically in shock. As, Koda would basically look at her, as, Koda would basically start to leave. They would say, what the hell was that? As after, Koda left, Koda said this, don't worry, Izuku, no girl's going to, watch you, do that. He would basically say that, as Izuku would say this. Why would the girl watch me while I'm basically just, like, resting in the pool? Or not really pool, I meant, the hot springs. He would basically say that, as he would basically look at the wall, as he would say this. Probably Mineta, he would basically say to himself, as he would basically keep resting in the pool. So, the rest of the girls are basically, are still pretty much weeping, mostly the girls that were, pretty much in love with Izuku, as one of them specifically, one girl was basically excluded out of this, and that girl was Bakugo. So, instead of going into the girls' pool, she would basically decide to go into the boys' pool. And the only boy was Izuku, so yeah. So, after getting into the, locker rooms, I guess you could say, she would basically, start to, change her clothes into her little bikini, as she would start to go into the, into the boys, side. Yeah, I'm gonna be leaving it off here because, yeah, so I'm gonna be leaving this part here, so yeah, so, I hope you liked the video, comment and subscribe, and I hope to see you guys next time. Bye-bye. Oh, God.